It's strange how something as simple as a sleepover can feel like a turning point. It wasn't the first time I'd stayed over at Eli's place, not by a long shot. We'd been best friends since the 6th grade, bonded over shared detentions, swapped playlists like love letters we didn't know how to write, and fought over who could chug more Monster Energy without puking. But this weekend felt different, in that soft, humming way you only notice when everything else is quiet. Maybe it was the end of the school year pressing down on us like a hand on the small of the back, gentle, but pushing us forward. Or maybe it was the way Eli had smiled when he invited me over again. That smile that curled at the corners, like he knew something I didn't. I watched the side of his face as he drove, hands loose on the steering wheel, windows down, music playing low. He hummed along to the 1975, a song we used to blast in his bedroom, yelling lyrics until his dad banged on the door with a half-hearted, "Shut it down." His voice cracked on the high note, and he laughed without looking at me. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah," I said a little too quickly. "Just tired." A lie, technically. My heart had been doing little cartwheels since he picked me up. I wasn't even sure why. We weren't doing anything groundbreaking, just heading back to his place after a late movie and greasy fries from that one diner with flickering neon lights. But there was something about going back, about the familiarity of his room and the way it still smelled like clean laundry and sandalwood deodorant. Something about pretending we were still just kids with time to waste. Eli's house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, where the streetlights barely reached and everything felt like it was holding its breath. His dad's truck wasn't in the driveway, which meant the house would be quiet. I used to love that silence. No nagging, no expectations. Just us, playing video games until we passed out, his laughter echoing through the dark. But now I noticed things I didn't before. How his hand brushed mine when he handed me his hoodie. The way he always waited a beat too long before answering my texts. And how my chest got tight when he leaned too close, not from discomfort, but because I didn't want to move away. We weren't the same boys we were last year. And I wasn't sure if that made me excited or terrified. Eli and I weren't just best friends, we were something in between brothers, conspirators, and the kind of people who could sit in silence for an hour and walk away feeling like we had a full conversation. We met in middle school after I accidentally knocked his tray out of his hands in the cafeteria. I'd braced for a punch, but instead he'd laughed, bright and open-mouthed, and said, "Guess I needed a new shirt anyway." That was Eli. Unflappable. Effortless. He always knew how to defuse tension like it was second nature, and maybe that's what drew me in first, how easy it was to be around him. By high school, we'd become inseparable. Our routines overlapped like clockwork. Walking to school together, arguing about the best movie soundtracks, spending late nights on Discord playing games we never really cared about just to talk. Eli always had a way of filling a room, like his energy spilled out and left little flecks of sunlight on everything. Who was the quieter one? More observer than participant. But with him, it never felt like I had to be more than I was. That, I think, was the most dangerous part. The sleepover was impromptu, just a too tired to drive home excuse after the movie, but Eli didn't question it. He just threw his hoodie at me when we got back to his room, told me I could grab whatever from his drawer, and flopped onto his bed like he didn't have a care in the world. He looked over at me, eyes half-lidded, grin tugging at his lips. "Still afraid of my dad's snoring?" "He sounds like a dying lawnmower, man," I shot back, smirking. "And that's me being polite." He laughed, head falling back against the pillow. "That's fair. But you'll survive. Like always." I sat on the edge of his bed, folding his hoodie in my lap for a second too long. It smelled like him, faint detergent, a little cedar, and whatever cologne he'd half-heartedly swiped on earlier. My chest squeezed tight, and I focused on the scuffed edge of his dresser instead. There was only one sleeping bag, and I hadn't brought mine. It was summer, and the floor fan in his room never really worked, so I figured we'd deal with it later. But as he glanced at it lying crumpled near the foot of the bed, Eli raised an eyebrow. "You want the bed or the bag?" I hesitated. "I can take the bag." "You sure?" He shifted onto his side, watching me. "You always end up crawling back up here anyway. Just take the bed." "I'm not a stray cat, Eli." "You kind of are, though." We both laughed, and I hated how much I liked the way he looked at me when I did. Eventually, I changed into an old t-shirt he lent me and dropped onto the mattress beside him. Not touching, just near. The fan hummed in the corner, stirring warm air around the room, and the overhead light buzzed faintly. It was familiar, all of it, but I kept feeling like something was about to shift beneath my feet. Eli stretched his arms above his head, the fabric of his shirt lifting just enough to reveal a sliver of pale skin. I looked away quickly, heart thudding louder than it had any right to. "You good?" he asked again, softer this time. "Yeah. Just thinking." He rolled over to face me, his voice barely above a whisper now. "Don't overthink, man. It's just us." I nodded, but the words caught in my throat. Just us. I wasn't sure what that meant anymore. Not when his laugh made something in me ache. Not when I felt every inch of space between us like a live wire. And especially not when I caught him looking at me in the dark, eyes searching, like maybe he felt it too. Like maybe he always had. At some point after midnight, the storm rolled in. It started with a low grumble of thunder, distant and harmless. I'd been half asleep, lulled by the white noise of the fan and Eli's soft breathing. But then the rain came in sheets, hammering against the window like it was trying to break in, and the power flickered with a soft snap. The room went dark and Eli groaned beside me. "Dude," he muttered, voice thick with sleep. "You awake?" "Yeah," I whispered. "Power's out." "No kidding," I said, forcing a laugh. My eyes adjusted slowly, tracing the outlines of his face in the lightning-lit dark. His hair was a mess, stuck to his forehead in clumps, and he looked so effortlessly beautiful in that rumpled way that made my stomach knot. He sat up and reached for his phone. The faint glow lit his features, casting shadows across his cheekbones and jaw. I looked away before I stared too long. "You good?" he asked again, the third time tonight, like he knew something was stirring under my skin that I hadn't said out loud yet. "Yeah. Just storm caught me off guard." "Yeah," he said, stretching his arms over his head. "Gets loud up here. You can crash in the bed if the floor freaks you out." I hesitated. "I'm already in the bed, Eli." He blinked, then grinned. "Damn, you're quiet tonight." "Because I'm losing it," I thought. "Because your arm brushed mine earlier and I still feel it like a burn. Because if I get any closer, I might not be able to pretend I don't want more." The storm kept getting worse. A burst of thunder rattled the window, and I flinched without meaning to. Eli noticed. "Dude," he said, patting the space beside him. "Come here." "I'm literally right here." "Closer." "You're clinging to the edge like I'm contagious." That earned a laugh out of me, even as I shifted toward him. Our legs touched, bare skin against bare skin, and I froze. He didn't. He just let it happen, like it wasn't even worth reacting to, like it was normal. For him, maybe it was. For me, it felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under me and I was just floating, untethered and breathless. "You still scared of storms?" he asked, voice quieter now. "I'm not scared." "You jumped like a full foot just now." I was startled. "Okay," he said, nudging my shoulder with his. Startled. I should have pulled back. But I didn't. I stayed there, close enough to feel the heat of him, to count the freckles across his arm. The silence between us thickened, full of things I didn't know how to say. I wanted to tell him that every time he looked at me a second too long, I caught my breath. That I'd replayed 1,000 of our conversations just to hear his voice. That being near him like this, without space, without pretense, was both heaven and hell. Another crash of thunder made me twitch. Without thinking, Eli reached for my hand. Just a small touch. Fingers brushing mine. But I felt it everywhere. He didn't let go. "You remember that time we got stuck in the rain freshman year?" he asked suddenly, voice low. I nodded. "You gave me your hoodie. Said it was waterproof." "It wasn't." "I know," I said, smiling at the memory. "I was soaked. You looked like a drowned rat." "Thanks." He chuckled but didn't let go of my hand. His thumb moved absently across my knuckles, just barely, but I felt every pass like a pulse. "I liked that day," he said after a beat. Yeah. We laughed a lot. There was something in his voice, something almost shy. I turned to look at him, our faces barely a foot apart in the dark. The fan had stopped spinning, and the air was thick, too warm, like the whole room was holding its breath. I wanted to say me too. I wanted to say I remember everything. But all I could manage was, I did too. His gaze flicked down to our joined hands, then up again, locking with mine. There was a moment, sharp, delicate, where the world tilted. Where I could have said it. Where everything inside me screamed to just do it, to leap and stop hiding behind the safety of jokes and years of platonic pretending. But I was terrified. Terrified that if I did, he'd pull away. That this, whatever this moment was, would shatter, and I'd lose the only person who ever felt like home. Eli's voice broke the silence, barely above a whisper. You ever think about things? Changing? I swallowed. What kind of things? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved his hand, slowly, carefully, to rest against mine, palm to palm. His pinky hooked around mine like a question. I don't know, he said, but there was something soft and raw in the way he said it. Just wondered if you did. I nodded, afraid to speak. Because yes, I'd thought about it. Thought about him. About us. Every damn day. And maybe he had too. Maybe this storm wasn't the only thing waking something in us tonight. The storm didn't let up. Lightning still flashed in erratic bursts, painting the ceiling in quick, silvery strokes. Eli's hand remained wrapped around mine, not tightly, but with purpose, like he was grounding me, or maybe grounding himself. Neither of us said anything for a while. The silence grew heavy, but not uncomfortable. It felt suspended, like something sacred was about to happen and the universe was holding its breath to see if we'd be brave enough to speak it into being. Eli, I said, finally, the word coming out softer than I expected. He looked at me without flinching. Yeah. I didn't know where to start. My mind was racing in 1,000 different directions, trying to piece together years of things left unsaid. Every almost moment. Every glance that lasted too long. Every time I'd wanted to say, I think I feel more than I'm supposed to. I started, but the words stuck in my throat. He waited. His thumb still stroked the side of my hand, so slowly I wasn't sure he even knew he was doing it. I've been thinking a lot lately. I tried again, about us. Eli didn't look surprised. If anything, his expression softened, eyes narrowing slightly like he was trying to hear between the lines of what I wasn't saying. Okay, he said carefully. What about us? I swallowed hard. I don't know. I think I haven't been honest with you. A beat passed. He shifted to sit up slightly against the headboard, and I followed, still close, still touching. His knee brushed mine, and neither of us pulled away. I'm not mad, he said after a second, voice quiet. Just talk to me. I looked down at our hands, still laced together. It gave me something to focus on. I think I've been scared, I said. Scared that if I said something, everything would change. That you'd look at me different. His brow creased slightly. Say something like what? I let out a shaky breath. I think I might have been falling for you. For a while now. The room went so quiet I could hear the rain hitting the roof like a slow drumbeat. I felt him freeze, but he didn't let go. I kept going, because now that it was out there, I had to follow through. I didn't plan to. It just happened. And I kept telling myself it wasn't real. That I was just confused or reading into things. But I know I wasn't. I'm not. Still no response. His eyes were locked on mine, wide and unreadable. I get it if you don't feel the same, I added quickly, my chest tight. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. Eli blinked slowly. His lips parted, then closed again. I watched him wrestle with something, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he might actually laugh it off or change the subject like he always did when things got serious. But then he whispered, "You're not the only one." My breath caught. I didn't know what it was at first. He went on, voice barely audible. I just kept thinking about you. In ways that didn't feel like just friends. I'd look at you and feel like something in my chest was pulling toward you, and I didn't understand it. Or maybe I did, but I didn't want to risk screwing this up. I stared at him, heart thundering. Why didn't you say anything? I was waiting for you, he admitted. Because you always know how to say things better. Because I didn't want to be wrong. He looked down then, like he was embarrassed. I wasn't wrong, was I? He asked. I shook my head. No. You weren't. A silence settled again, thick with emotion, but different now. No more hiding. Just this thing between us, finally laid bare and pulsing with a new, fragile life. Eli let out a soft laugh, the kind you make when something overwhelms you. This is kinda huge. Yeah, I whispered. It is. He leaned his head back against the wall and stared up at the ceiling, still holding my hand. So what now? I wasn't sure. Everything felt so new, and yet like it had been coming for a long, long time. Can I? I started, then hesitated. Can I kiss you? He looked at me then, something bright and vulnerable shining behind his eyes. God, yes. I didn't rush it. I moved slowly, giving him every second to change his mind, to pull away. But he didn't. When our lips met, it was tentative at first, gentle, like a question. He kissed me back just as softly. It wasn't perfect. Our noses bumped, and I was shaking more than I wanted to admit. But it was real. Familiar and electrifying all at once. His hand came up to cradle my cheek, and I leaned into it instinctively, breathing him in. When we pulled apart, I didn't open my eyes right away. I just stayed there, foreheads touching, his fingers still tangled in mine. Was that okay? I asked. More than okay, he said. I've wanted that for longer than I'll probably ever admit. I smiled, eyes still closed. Same. He laughed, breathy and soft, and pressed another kiss to the corner of my mouth. You always were braver than me. I was scared out of my mind. Well, he said, resting his head on my shoulder, you still made the first move. So technically you win. I chuckled, heart full. I don't care about winning. I just want this. Yeah, he said, his voice quieter now, more certain. Me too. Outside, the storm began to fade, the thunder moving off into the distance like a secret whispered too loudly. The room felt warmer somehow, not because of the weather, but because we'd finally stepped into something real. We didn't say much after that. We just lay there, fingers twined, hearts slowing together in the dark. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I don't remember falling asleep. Just Eli's arm draped over my waist, the steady rise and fall of his chest against my back, and the warmth of our fingers still loosely intertwined. When I woke, morning light was just starting to filter through the curtains, soft and golden, dust dancing in the beams. I blinked slowly, orienting myself to the unfamiliar quiet. The storm had passed. The world outside was calm again, and inside, everything had shifted. Eli was still beside me. His eyes were closed, mouth slightly parted, hair a complete disaster. He looked peaceful, and my heart ached in that way it does when you realize you're exactly where you want to be. I must have moved because his eyes cracked open a second later. Hey, he rasped, voice still thick with sleep. Hey, I whispered back. He blinked slowly, like he was making sure this wasn't a dream. Then, without warning, he smiled. It was that half-lazy, half-smug grin he always pulled when he got the last word in an argument. You kissed me. I rolled my eyes, grinning in spite of myself. Yeah. Thanks for keeping score. I'm just saying. Feels worth remembering. He stretched, his shirt riding up slightly, exposing a sliver of skin. I glanced at it too long, and when I looked back up, he was watching me. See something you like? I groaned and pulled a pillow over my face. Hey, he laughed, tugging it away. No hiding now. We already did the hard part. I let him take the pillow, but I couldn't quite meet his eyes yet. It just still feels surreal. Like we're in some weird in-between where everything's new but also kind of the same. I know what you mean, he said, voice softer now. But honestly, I feel better. Like a weight's been lifted. And now I get to do this. He leaned in and pressed a slow, deliberate kiss to my cheek. Without it being a secret. I smiled, cheeks warm. You're going to be insufferable about this, aren't you? Oh, 100%, he said with a grin. But I'm still nervous. Yeah. Best surprised. About what? He hesitated, toying with the edge of the blanket between us. Just what happens now? What if it gets weird? What if we mess this up? I nodded. I'd thought the same thing a dozen times in the hours I couldn't sleep. It might get weird. We might mess up. But I'd rather figure it out with you than keep pretending I'm okay not knowing what this could be. Eli reached out and took my hand again, like he'd done last night. Same. We lay there for a while, talking about everything and nothing, how we'd both suspected each other for months, how neither of us could look directly at the other when we laughed too hard, how many near misses we'd had that felt obvious in hindsight. I always thought, I said at one point, staring at the ceiling, if something ever happened between us, it would ruin everything. And now, he asked. Now it feels like it's finally beginning. He turned on his side to face me, serious now. So what do we call this? I laughed, nervous. I don't know. I like that, he said. But I mean, are we telling people? Or just taking it slow? I considered that. Maybe just us for now. Let it be ours, before the world has an opinion. Eli nodded. Yeah. Ours sounds good. Then, quieter, I'm really glad you came over. Me too. He reached out, tucked a strand of my hair behind my ear, something so small, so gentle, it made me melt. Also, I think my dad came in last night. I blinked. Wait, what? Yeah, he laughed. I heard the door creak open and then shut again. Probably saw us asleep and noped right out. Oh my God, I groaned, burying my face in my hands. That's so embarrassing. Hey, Eli said, nudging me. At least now we don't have to have that conversation. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off the bed. He pulled me back, arms snug around my waist, anchoring me. And there, in the mess of morning light and tangled sheets and shared laughter, it finally felt real. We had no idea what would come next, but we had each other. And that was more than enough. By the time we emerged from Eli's room, the house was still and warm, the kind of quiet that only follows a storm. The sun had returned, diffused through rain-dampened windows, casting everything in a soft, golden hue. It smelled like fresh earth and coffee, and for once, I didn't feel like I needed to hide anything, especially not the way Eli's fingers brushed against mine as we walked down the hall. His dad was in the kitchen, leaning over the stove. He looked up when we entered, his eyes flicking from our faces to our slightly rumpled clothes, then back to our hands, now very much not holding. Morning, he said, with a tone that gave away nothing. Eli cleared his throat. Hey, Dad. I tried to smile like everything was normal. Like I hadn't confessed my feelings to his son in the middle of a thunderstorm and kissed him until sleep took over. His dad just nodded and went back to stirring eggs. Pancakes are on the counter. Help yourselves. We both mumbled our thanks and busied ourselves with plates, pretending to be preoccupied with syrup ratios and butter placement. But I felt Eli's knuckles nudge mine under the counter, a silent "I'm here," and when we sat down, he pulled his chair just a little too close. We didn't say anything about last night while we ate. We didn't have to. There was something new in the air, settled, maybe even peaceful. Like we'd passed through a storm stronger than the one outside and come out cleaner for it. Later, once we'd helped clean up and made the ritual Saturday morning rounds, watering the garden with his dad, sorting laundry, resisting the urge to kiss every time we passed each other in the hallway, we found ourselves back outside. The yard still glistened with rain, grass squishy beneath our sneakers. Eli tugged me toward the big oak tree near the back fence, the one where we used to build forts and trade Pokemon cards before we even knew what attraction was. He leaned against it and crossed his arms, eyes scanning the sky. Clouds are clearing up, he said. Yeah. I followed his gaze, then looked back at him. You okay? He nodded slowly, then pushed off the tree and came to stand in front of me. I've been thinking. Oh. He rolled his eyes. Shut up. I mean it. About us. Last night. I held my breath. I don't want this to be just a moment, he said. Like something we only talk about when it's dark and quiet and raining. I smiled. Me neither. He reached into his pocket, then held something out in his palm. My phone charger. I found it under the bed this morning, he said. You always forget it when you stay over. I laughed. You're never gonna let me live that down, huh? Nope, he said, then added more softly, I was thinking maybe you could leave it here. Just in case. I stared at him, heart thudding. In case of what? I asked, even though I already knew. In case you want to come back. Stay over more. Maybe not just as my best friend. I took the charger from his hand, curling my fingers around it like it was something sacred. That sounds a lot like a boyfriend invite. He shrugged, trying to look casual but failing. I mean, if the title fits. I stepped closer until there was barely space between us. It does. He grinned. Cool. Then I kissed him, because I could, because I wanted to, because there was nothing left to fear. When we pulled apart, he looked down at our joined hands and said, So, next Friday? What about it? My dad's out of town. We could binge that show you never shut up about. And maybe talk more about the future? Yeah, I said, smiling. Let's do that. We walked back to the house together, hand in hand, the charger nestled in my pocket like a tiny promise. The sun broke through the clouds fully then, lighting the path before us. And as we crossed the lawn, hearts light and steps easy, I realized. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning.